Dave Refs, Nicole Auerbach, and Howard Griffith. It was a wild week in college football in general. Some crazy games. I'd say the Big Ten wasn't necessarily crazy, but we did get some clarity, it feels like, into the division races on both sides.
We did, and the top teams, the teams that we thought were the top teams coming in, played like that. But yeah, we didn't have any of the double overtimes and some of those field storms that were around the rest of the country.
Yeah, I think you look at the West, and that's where a lot of intrigue lays. And it's going to be fun to kind of watch things continue to play out with the Western Division.
Let's get into our big story. It is the latest AP poll. Get a sense of where the nation thinks the Big Ten stands. Ohio State holding steady at number 2 in its bye week, 17 first-place votes for the Bucks. Michigan up a spot after manhandling Penn State. The Wolverines, by the way, are number 3 in the coaches poll. Nittany Lions down to 16, and Illinois made the biggest jump in the country, up 6 spots to number 18. Let's start with Michigan, Howard, 418 rushing yards. That is insane. I mean, just to put it in perspective, that is more rushing yards in that one game than Penn State had given up all year coming into the game. It felt like a statement game to me from Michigan. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've been talking about this offensive line, whether or not it was better than last year's offensive line, and you only need to watch the play of the running backs to understand that, you know, they're getting to the second level without being touched. And you start to think about how long they possessed the football. It was 40 minutes, I believe. And they still had explosive plays, but they're just playing at a different level and a different speed than some other places. And this is a Penn State team that we thought was really good on the defensive side a couple of weeks ago. And now when they have to line up and play, let's call it big boy football, that's not what they do.
Yeah, and I think what was really impressive too about Michigan was obviously what they did at the line of scrimmage on both sides. But when you talk about that run game and the 418 rushing yards, I mean, it was different running backs. You saw Donovan Edwards. Yeah. You saw Blake Corum break off runs. Blake Corum now leads all of FBS with 13 rushing touchdowns, by the way. Been saying this for a number of weeks, that he is one of the best running backs in the country. He is. But he was one of the ones quick to credit that offensive line after the game. And what's fascinating about that is this is an offensive line that won the Joe Moore Award last year as the nation's best offensive line. And it might be better this year.
It might be better. Yeah. Let's not overlook the defense, right? They are top 6 in the nation in rushing defense, total defense, scoring defense, pass efficiency defense. So you're talking about a team that replaced both its coordinators, and we had these question marks about just how good they would be and how seamlessly they would be able to do that. Yeah. And I think a lot of those questions have been answered. They are really good. And to me, Howard, I look at this team now and I say, man, if I am Ohio State right now, I am doubling down on 9-on-7 drill, right? Because they got bullied in that game last year. They got out-toughed in that game last year. And Michigan is every bit as tough as they were a season ago. I'm not saying, I think Ohio State's fabulous. But if you're going to beat Michigan, you're going to have to out-tough them.
And I think the other thing that's I think is really important, and we watched Ohio State do this, the way they win football games. These are two teams, and Ohio State's done it more explosively in the passing game. But I do believe that Michigan is going to get there. But you're right about the 9-on-7. These are two teams that want to play physical brands of football and really wear their opponents down. And we really haven't seen college football. Nicole and I were talking about this in the green room. We haven't seen college football like this right now, where as an offense, you can spread them out, or you can just turn around and put 2-3 tight ends in and control the game that way. I think we're watching where the next evolution of football is going. It's already happening in the National Football League, where you can spread people out, but you still want to run the football. We're now starting to see that at the college game, because teams want to be able to beat their opponents up because they don't get an opportunity to really practice against it.
And they're doing that, like they want to set the tone. They want to do all of this from a physicality standpoint. I think that you maybe in, with peak spread offenses where it was really just about athletes in space. Like we saw Michigan take a ton of pride in winning games the way that they did last year. Just smash mouth football. Yeah. And the way that what was the phrase we heard coming out of this from J.J. McCarthy? A butt kicking, right? Like they were proud of winning the game the way that they did. One Penn State first down in the first half. It was a clinic on both sides of the ball, and I just think there's a lot of pride in that, even though you're obviously incorporating a lot of the modern offensive system into it.
Hey, I do want to get into Penn State, because, this is now the second straight year. You start out 5-0, lose the sixth game. Again, I think I was certainly under the impression their defense was far better, or certainly was at the level that it had been a year ago. It was a little bit different defense, and we knew they were replacing a lot in the front seven. But again, this was a total mismatch. To your point, I almost think 41-17 is deceptive. I don't think the game was that close, right?
Yeah.
Because Penn State had the one long run for Sean Clifford that led to a touchdown, and then kind of a flukish pick six where the ball literally bounced off P.J. Mustipher's helmet and got returned for a touchdown. But to your point, Nicole, they had one first down in the first half. This was a total dominant effort, and it just feels like the gulf between Penn State and the other two is significant. Penn State's really good, but it's just not at the level of Michigan and Ohio State.
And we come out of these games saying that over and over and over again. It feels like we talk about that physicality. We talk about the size and the speed and athleticism. Penn State's getting talent. They're getting 4- and 5-star guys. But then you see a game like this where they're just totally pushed around on both offensive and defensive line, and you just see that gap continue to widen. I thought it was really telling. P.J. Mustipher said after the game that it was embarrassing, and then you also had James Franklin talking after the game about the size of his guys on the defensive line. He's been there for a while. These are guys that he's recruiting. If he thinks that they need to be built a different way, like the dudes that Michigan has, right, or the dudes that Ohio State has, they need to change that, because this is the same story. Every time we see them play these games, we talk about the margin, and we see it in the score, but we see it on the performance of just how different Ohio State and Michigan are from Penn State.
It's no question that Penn State has done an unbelievable job of recruiting the skill positions. There's no question about that. But this is, as you just alluded to, the problem is it's at the offense and defensive lines. If you want to win championships, you have to have the big people up front that can control a game, that can be disruptive to your opponent's offense. And they have not been able to do that when it comes to playing against the top teams, the ranked teams in the country. And I don't know how you fix it, right? I don't really know how you fix that other than going all in on a lot of offense and defensive linemen. But what do your numbers look like as far as recruiting is concerned when you do that?
I will say this: 2016, they lost to Michigan 49-10, and they ended up going to Indianapolis. This to me feels different. If you remember that game, they were down to their 7th and 8th linebackers, right? It was a really weird game. This feels different. This does not feel to me like a team that can make it to Indy. I just don't see it.
Well, I think one of the
part of
challenges
it is, and I'm sorry, Howard,
yeah,
but part of it is the Michigan and Ohio State are really good, and now Michigan would have to lose twice, and I don't see that happening.
It's just not that they're really good, because we've always known Ohio State's had the players, and we knew Michigan was coming on with their recruiting as well. It's the way they're playing the game right now.
Yeah.
They're not just, let's spread everybody out and throw it all over the place. That's not what they're doing. They're lining up and saying, our guys are better than your guys, try to stop us. And, I want to go back to the Michigan thing really quickly, because Coach Moore, offense coordinator now, we talk about this offensive line probably being better. He's still the offensive line coach. And he has other duties that he's responsible for, and his offensive line is playing at a higher level, arguably, than what they did last year. So what an unbelievable job he's doing with more responsibilities as a play caller, and he's still taking care of his position group, because Harbaugh was like, well, you still got to coach these guys. Yeah, you go call plays. That's cute. Like that. Need you to do that. But our guys up front still need to be coached by you, and they are responding and have responded.
It's really impressive, and I agree with the assessment that they're probably better on the offensive line than they were a year ago. Jim Harbaugh came under a lot of criticism early in his career. He has pushed every correct button here over the last 2 years. It has been so impressive to watch. They are quite good. And I'll say this, Illinois is really
Yes.
they are a really legitimately good team.
Yeah.
We've known for a few weeks now they have a very good defense. But what they did offensively against Minnesota, against a team that came in number 1 in the nation in total defense, and they could do whatever they wanted against them. This is a complete football team, Howard.
They really are. And again, their offensive linemen have played a lot of football too. And they're really starting to play some of their best football as a unit, as a group. But then the wide receivers are stepping up and making plays. I think DeVito being a part of that is a big part of it, because it just seems like he's just the perfect fit for what they want to do offensively. And obviously Chase Brown has just been incredible of what he's been able to do, the run he's on right now. And they're calling the right plays. You talk about putting defenses in conflict. That's exactly what's happening each and every week. And, Coach Bielema and his assistants are doing an unbelievable job right now.
And you know what else is great for that defense is an offense that can really eat up the clock. I mean, the time of possession in this game, 40 minutes, really impressive. And I'm excited that we're going to hear from Tommy DeVito later in the show, because his return, what he was able to do in the passing game, obviously he was 78% completion percentage. But all of those things, it stressed Minnesota's defense, and it kept them on the field. And he did that so many different times. So you have a great defense that is also relatively fresh.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty amazing. And again, I think the offense was the story coming out of that game. But defensively, I mean, holy cow. Like, Minnesota ended up with 38 passing yards. They got 17 of them in the last minute. So they basically had 21 passing yards in that game. And we were singing the praises of Tanner Morgan. Now, he had struggled in the previous game, but we were talking about how much better they were and how Kirk Shiraka had turned things around. They had no answers at all. I mean, other than hand the ball to Mo Ibrahim. Mm-hmm. That was the only thing that they could do to move the ball. It's incredible how good this Illinois defense is.
2 sacks, 5 quarterback hurries. I mean, it was just a lot of pressure, and that's why I think this defense is just really fun to watch, because they're so energized and they're doing a lot of different things. And I think Illinois offensively, though, was really impressive. And again, it starts with DeVito. We talk about Chase Brown all the time on this show. Brian Hightower is a great receiving target talent out there. I just think, to me, when I watch this team, I see a complete team. Yeah. I see a team that's not gotten too high or too low. They've been handling the success and the praise that they've been getting. But they're just so even-keeled. And you know that this is going to travel. You know that they're going to play a certain way at home, too. And you just know that you're going to get all of this, and it really just complements each other. Because, again, like, time of possession helps the defense. A defense like that helps the offense. It all pieces together really nicely.
Yeah, Brian Hightower, I'm glad you brought that up, because Brian had a catch in the game, an over-the-shoulder catch. I watched him in high school. He hasn't made a play like that at the college level since his time in high school. He's always had the ability to make plays, but whether it was injuries or what have you, wrong fit, needed to be in a different place. But they've got their wide receiver group is starting to really emerge. And it's because you are able to use play action, and they're able to find these guys. They're open down the field. They're getting open. Brian is doing an unbelievable job. Isaiah Williams is doing his thing. The next thing they have to do is get the tight end involved as well. And they throw it to the backside of the backfield on a regular basis. It seems like it's a wheel route being run every week.
That wheel route to Chase Brown, that 40-yard touchdown, that was more passing yards than Minnesota had for the whole game, right? On the first drive of the game in one play. I've been singing the praises of this defense, and we've been talking a lot. They're first in the nation in pass efficiency defense. It is not even close. So the gap between number 1 and number 2 is the same as the gap between 2 and 28. Yeah. Like, that's how good they are. It is remarkable the job that has been done by Ryan Walters on that side of the ball, because they were a bad defense when he took it over. I do want to talk about Minnesota, because it felt like this was Minnesota's year to me. I mean, when we saw them in camp, they were really good. They've been that team. If you talk about the 3 that have won it, Wisconsin, Iowa, Northwestern, they've kind of been the next team a few times where you felt like they were close and they could break through and hadn't done it. It felt to me like this was going to be their year. It pretty clearly isn't going to be now, right? Because they would lose the tiebreaker to Purdue and Illinois. What do you make of where the Gophers are and how they can kind of pick up the pieces?
2 weeks ago, they were the most complete team in the West. And I don't think you would have found anyone who would have argued with it. I was screaming for them to be ranked 3 weeks ago. And, now one of the things that has been true, though, when they turn the football over, they don't have a chance and to win football games. And you look at this previous week, turn it over again. So you just can't turn it over that way. But the defense has been worn down. because the offenses have been able to possess the ball. They haven't been able to generate enough offensive plays to keep drives alive, and that's been one of the unfortunate things. But I think this is why it's so much fun to watch college football, because it changes from week to week. You just don't know. An injury here, an injury there, a couple of turnovers over here, and it changes the entire complex. That's why it's so tough to win and be consistent at this level.
Yeah, which is why 2-3 weeks ago we think we know something and we don't actually know it.
Right.
And what ends up happening too is, they obviously have injuries, and so we didn't see the impact of Chris Ottman-Bell's injury immediately, but clearly that's been a problem. They need guys who can catch the ball. And now you have Tanner Morgan, and you don't know exactly what his status is as well, and that's going to change what is available for Minnesota too. I mean, you can have a great running back, one of the best running backs in the country, but you have to have pieces around him. So you're seeing the fallout of things like that as well. And the schedule did fall really nicely for them on paper. And then you look at this. I mean, who would have thought Purdue and Illinois would be the two atop the West right now?
And let's say this can still be a special season for Minnesota. I mean, you don't have to go to Indy for it to be a special season. I mean, you look at this Penn State game's big. I mean, it's big for both of them.
Yep.
But then you look at the schedule after that, and you feel like, man, every single one of those games, they got a great chance of winning. And if you win 10 games at Minnesota and get to a bowl game, and you're going to feel really good about yourself. I mean, so it's not to say that all is lost, but I don't think they're going to win the West, and I know that was one of the goals.
I think one of the things that we probably underestimated, and they did a great job earlier in the year, probably being able to hide it because they were better than the teams that they were playing against, but it was all the losses at the offensive line.
Yep.
Right.
Losing 4 of your 5.
Yeah.
It's finally showing up. And listen, I know they struggled to run the ball a couple weeks ago, but and Mo wasn't playing, but this is a team that, remember, plugged in like 5 different guys last year at some point.
That offensive line.
With that offensive line.
Right.
Now there's a new offensive line, and we're seeing it takes time.
I think what's been interesting is they've kind of been out Minnesota'd these last couple games, right? They've been out possessed. I mean, Illinois the ball for more than 40 minutes.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It's pretty.
Illinois is beating a lot of teams at the style that they like to be.
Beating them at their own game,
Yeah.
right? They certainly did it against Wisconsin as well. Back on Big Ten today, Purdue on a 4-game win streak for the first time in 4 years after taking down Nebraska Saturday night. Devin Mockabee, a walk-on, went for 178 rushing yards. That is a Purdue freshman record.
Wow.
A couple more TD grabs for Chuck Sizzle. Boilers, 608 yards of total offense. The D did leave a little bit to be desired. I do think it's fair to say that, but man, they're tough to stop.
There was one player that's like,
they had a hard time.
Yeah. You know what I love about Purdue games? They're kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure game. You really never know what's going to happen, and even if there is a big lead at any point, you know it's going to be a one-possession game down to the wire.
Right. You sound like Jeff Brom, right? I mean, he just at the end of the game, right? He just couldn't bring himself to be happy. Yeah.
Can't be happy. And let me tell you all the things that we need to do next week. We'll look at the film. We'll see. We'll evaluate. But we've got to be a lot better.
Right.
It is. But I think one of the things that I appreciate out of his post-game comments is that he really goes into the game and what worked and what didn't work, and you get a sense for where he wants to try to improve that following week and really what they needed to see. So, this is a team that's really exciting to watch. And the one thing we talked about it Saturday morning when Aiden is feeling 100% and on top of his game, he is an unbelievable quarterback. I mean, he throws guys open, the anticipation, all of those things. And now all of a sudden, where it came from, I think we're all still looking, but where the run game all of a sudden, it's like come out of nowhere. And they're just figuring out ways to win football games, which is fun to watch with those guys.
I love when coaches go against type, where you're like, wow, Jeff Brom has a run game. He needs a run game. It's fun when that stuff happens. But the Aiden O'Connell point is a really good one, because this is just someone who, I love him. I spent a lot of time around him in the preseason. He's great to talk to. And you see that he could be maybe the second best quarterback in the Big Ten as a pure passer in a passing offense. And then you see the anticipation. And Jeff Brom talked about that, right? That he's not sure he's been around quarterbacks that can anticipate the throw that way, and Howard was talking about throwing guys open. It is so fun to watch that. Like, it is so cool to watch a quarterback who knows, and he's got that chemistry. In Charlie Jones just got there, right? Like, this is an offseason addition this year, but he's got this chemistry where he just knows, and he's going to find them, and he's so accurate. It's just a really fun offense to watch.
It is. It's crazy to see Purdue put up 43 minutes time of possession, because that is, to your point, it's against type. It's just not who they are. Now, they also gave up 9 yards per play on defense. I mean, again, there is some validity to what Jeff Fromm said.
But they won the game, right?
But they won the game.
You can win the game in
Absolutely.
different ways.
No doubt. And they're at Wisconsin this week, and they will try to end a 15-game losing streak against the Badgers. Let's talk a little bit about Wisconsin. Give all the credit in the world to Michigan State, because I think a ton of people, maybe including us, had counted them out. And for them, they found themselves down early in this game and just kind of rallied and figured out a way to win. But I do think that it pointed out that all of the kind of good feeling around Wisconsin from that Northwestern game probably had a lot more to do with how lost Northwestern was on defense than anything Wisconsin was doing. The pass game, once again, was missing in action.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's exactly what, for Michigan State, they needed, right? A performance like that from Graham Mertz that was really unimpressive and very much a struggle. They were still in position. They still could have won this game from Wisconsin's standpoint. But, yeah, it was just kind of all the same problems from early in the season. I mean, they're close to some of these records of, like, we haven't – this program hasn't lost to unranked teams X amount of times per year, home losses. Like, they're losing games kind of in a similar way, in bad ways, the same over and over and over again. So I feel like it was, again, we talk a lot about Graham Mertz and underwhelming performances. That's really where this one starts for me.
It does, because of the performance he had a week ago, throwing for 5 touchdowns. So we wanted to see him be able to build on that. And that didn't happen against a team where you would expect that he'd be able to have a great deal of success. But I'd also say it's just not all on Graham. He's easy to point at because of what he's done throughout his career. But this is a team that used to dominate the ground game.
Yeah. They're also pretty average defense. I mean, they're not a great defense, right? I mean, certainly by Big Ten standards, they're an average defense.
By their own standards.
Well, their standards are incredible.
Yeah.
But I'm saying when you look at like the elite defenses in the Big Ten, this isn't one of them.
It's not
They're
close.
just not.
And Michigan State isn't one of the elite offenses right now.
Right.
And they did some special things at the end of that game and into overtime. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's just kind of, look, they're 1-4 against Power 5 teams. I mean, this is just kind of who they are. And so when you look at the Big Ten standings, they're in last place. Now, part of that is they've just played one more game than everyone else. But, I mean, 1-3. I look at, to me, the line of demarcation is after those first two. I don't think anyone else is in this race right now. And it's funny because 2 weeks ago we were sitting here, right, and we had the 6-way tie for first place. And,
I missed that. I missed that already.
There was at least the narrative, though, that it was wide open. I don't think that we sat here and really believed necessarily that a couple of those teams were in it, but I think you could at least create arguments for them. I don't think you can create an argument for anyone other than Purdue or Illinois right now. Do you guys agree?
I completely agree. And let's look at who Illinois already beat, right? They already went through the teams that on paper are the teams that are factors in this divisional race already. They already played Minnesota. They already played Iowa. They already played Wisconsin. So you've absolutely got to say that Illinois is the favorite. And then you got that game against Purdue circled. Purdue, again, I choose your own adventure. I truly believe that. Like, this is a team that these games go in unpredictable directions, and this offense is going to provide stress in a different way that probably Illinois' defense has not seen yet. So that one's going to be a monster game. But you're right. I don't feel the consistency has come from anyone else enough to be a factor in this. And I just think Illinois is the clear favorite now.
Yeah, I think so. When you start to think about what Illinois does to opposing quarterbacks with pressure, just with that defensive line alone, they create a lot of problems.
Right.
So you could see, what they would do against a team where you know exactly where that quarterback's going to be. And I'm talking about Purdue at this particular point. But this Purdue team, you don't know. I mean, you talk about Coach Walters is going to have to prepare for a whole lot because Coach Brom has put a lot on film right now to this point about different concepts and things that you're going to have to prepare for in that particular game. But I think you both are right when you talk about Illinois and Purdue. Those are the two teams. That's going to be the race right there.
That game is in November. It's in Champaign. You can look at the schedule. Illinois has got the tougher schedule in that they still have to go to Michigan, but that game really is irrelevant in the division race.
If they
beat Purdue, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter, right? So obviously Purdue's got the easier crossover left with Indiana, but it really feels like it's going to come down to if they both take care of their business. Comes down to that.
And we
game.
know that Indiana game with Purdue is never gimme.
I hear you.
That's
No,
Never
no,
gimme.
again, like, look, the only thing that's certain in college football is uncertainty.
Right.
But it does feel like
does.
Illinois, I think they're the more complete team, and I think they're a little more in the driver's
And
seat.
again, as we all predicted back in August, the West is coming down to
Well,
Illinois. Purdue
honestly,
game.
though, I would say if you would have
Yeah.
told us this after our camp visit, I do not think we would have been shocked. Right? I
On
think
both
we-
of the two?
we-
That it was down to these two?
I think we thought Minnesota was really good. It was clear Iowa and Wisconsin had problems when we were there.
Yeah, I thought that Minnesota was probably the third best or the second best team that we had seen. We hadn't seen Michigan or Michigan State. I thought they were probably the
Yes.
second best
Yes.
team that we had seen in the summer to that point.
The surprise is that Minnesota isn't better. The surprise isn't that
Right.
Illinois and Purdue are good. Yeah, based on what we saw.
Yeah.
One day, right? A year it has been in Champaign. The Illini have now taken down Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa for the first time since 1983. Chase Brown is the nation's leading rusher. He has deservedly gotten a lot of attention. But how about his quarterback, the Syracuse transfer, Tommy DeVito, on pace to shatter the school's completion percentage record, threw for a TD, ran for a TD Saturday after leaving the previous week's game with an ankle injury. He is our big interview. Tommy DeVito joining us now. Tommy, what's it been like on campus? What's the vibe like now as you guys have continued to win?
It's been a lot of fun. Winning makes everything easier. So, just the joy seeing people on campus. You go in or you go in the grocery store, you get a haircut. Everybody's just smiling. It's happy. So, it's just awesome to see.
You guys shredded a team that was number one in the nation in total defense coming in. You had more rushing yards and more passing yards than they had been allowing total yards coming into this game. What made your scheme so effective against the Gophers?
Right. It's just a tribute to Coach Lunny and, his offense. And he really puts power on us as players to be able to go out and play football. It's not too much thinking. There's not too much. It's not hard at all. It's really just going out and playing football. It's really just up to execution. And it really starts with the offensive line. So always a big thank you to those guys because they helped me and Chase get going.
When you say it's not too much thinking, for those who don't know football as well as you do, what does that mean from the point of view of a quarterback?
Right, as in everything's simplified. You have your certain read keys here and there, defensive structures, but he doesn't make you have to see everything. It's a coach's job, situations, all that kind of thing. Like he sees, let's when it comes sometimes to check with me plays, like everything is very simplified to where we can go out and play as fast as possible and not have to think too much about it.
We mentioned Chase Brown. You have had a front row seat to watch the Chase Brown show. What makes him so special?
His versatility, for sure. Everybody sees him run the ball, but not a lot of people pay attention to the pass protection. That's the biggest thing, obviously, for me, a quarterback throwing the ball, just being able to hear him communicate with the offensive line and just me and him constant communication in the backfield. I think that's been the coolest thing with me and him so far. Is just he sees everything. And then obviously in the pass game, he can catch a ball and go. He can take distance. Obviously, you saw the first drive last week, caught a couple of balls, scored a touchdown, which was awesome to see. So I think just his versatility across the board brings a lot for him.
Take us through your last week, Tommy. There was a great deal of question, at least externally, as to whether or not you would be ready to play for this game. What was the nature of your injury in the Iowa game?
Right, yeah. So a couple weeks ago in the Chattanooga game, I had a little ankle injury. Played through it, got some treatment, was good for Wisco. And then Iowa just kind of rolled up on me again. And then at halftime, they made a decision that was not going to go. So I started my treatment then, and JV and the staff got me back going for this week.
When you say you started your treatment then, you started it at halftime of the Iowa game?
At halftime, yep. During the game, I was in the game, full pads on, everything, watching on a little TV, doing all the treatment, ice, heat, that whole deal.
That was a nerve-wracking game. So what was it like for you to be getting treatment and watching the game on television while your season is kind of unfolding before your very eyes there? Obviously an important game for you guys to win.
Right, I felt like one of those crazy fans, screaming and yelling at the TV, kind of like how I've seen my dad do my whole life growing up. He's a Steelers fan, so I've kind of seen him always yell at TV, and I always looked at him like, ooh. you're not a part of the team. I get you're a fan, but just like from that perspective, just like seeing it and knowing that I'm not like out there and I cannot like be there for my team and help my team, be in a good situation to win. But they pulled it out. It was awesome. I saw them come into the locker room, was ecstatic, and I couldn't be happier for it.
All right, you're talking a little bit about your dad. Tell us about your background. You are from New Jersey. Coach Bielema describes you as Jersey through and through. So what are the attributes that makes one Jersey?
I don't know. I mean, I'm always curious what it is from the outside, like from an outside point of view, looking at me, kind of, I don't know. I hold myself. I don't know. I think it's just the way that we go about our business, kind of a gritty state, I'll call it. You have all the seasons, not the most friendly people, but I think there's a good thing about that. But really just the way that we hold ourselves, it's a confidence thing. I think everybody has it. I'm not sure. Have you ever been to Jersey?
Oh, yeah, many times. Sure, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, you probably understand or I've seen it at some point. I mean, it's just a way of life. New Jersey, New York, just that whole area is, you got to go get it because, you go through all the seasons. You get the warm, you get the cold, it's a lot that goes into it.
All right, well, you went there, so I'll go there. You mentioned the Four Seasons, right? So you're Tommy DeVito, right? Tommy DeVito was the guitarist for the Four Seasons. Joe Pesci's got a Goodfellas character. His character in Goodfellas named Tommy DeVito. So of all the Tommy DeVitos, where do you think you rank on the fame scale?
In Jersey, outside of Jersey?
Either one. You tell me.
In New Jersey, probably not at the top of that list. Outside of Jersey, I hope it would be higher. I mean, that's always the question I get, whether they talk about the Four Seasons or if, you're related to Danny DeVito. It's just a lot of questions. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I'm still trying to work on Google. You type my name into Google, you always get, they come up first. So I'll say they're up there for sure.
Just to clarify, you're not related to Tommy DeVito or Danny
no.
DeVito? All right. Hey, Art Sitkowski's a Jersey guy too, which I think creates an interesting dynamic. Both the quarterbacks obviously transfers. He came from Rutgers. You came from Syracuse. What's your relationship like with him?
It's awesome. I'm not sure if you know our background, but me and Art have known each other for a long time. We used to train with the same quarterback coach back when we were late middle school, early high school ages. So we've known each other for a long time. We always used to work on the weekends. And it's just awesome to have another Jersey guy in the room. Obviously, he's from a different part of Jersey. He's from, more central, it's kind of South Jersey-ish. And then obviously we have Donovan Leary, who's another South Jersey guy. So we have three Jersey quarterbacks in the room that brightens up the room for sure. And, it makes a lot of fun.
Tell me a bit about that quarterback coach world. I actually have a good friend, Teddy Greenstein, who just wrote a really interesting book about the world of private quarterback coaches. I read that you started working with your quarterback coach when you were 6 years old. Like, I don't think people outside of the world of football really understand that there's just this whole cottage industry going on there. So, like, what were you doing with a quarterback coach at age 6? Take us through that.
Right. So the quarterback world is pretty crazy. Obviously, there's coaches all over the place. So it's kind of just like you kind of fall into a guy, or maybe you get recommended to someone as time goes on. But for me, I was always very slow growing up. So I went to this little, it's called Parisi's, like this little speed training school, and we had to do a couple of drills where we throw some balls, some tennis balls, whatever it was. And there was a man by the name of Leon Clark there at the time. And so I throw a ball, him and my dad got in contact. And at the age of 6 years old, he turned into be my quarterback coach. It's still like my second father to me. It's like my older brother. It's my mentor. And, I'm still with him to this day. But, I started at 6 years old. It was a long road to get here, and, we're still working.
So how much time do you spend with a private quarterback coach versus when you're at your normal practice for your, Pop Warner team or whatever it was and all the way through high school? Like, what's that balance like?
Right. So, yeah, my parents did an awesome job with that. Obviously 6 years old, you're very young. You don't really know what's going on, but they made sure I had a childhood. I would just always wake up and go do my workout before I went to the town pool or before I did this and that. So I was always just waking up earlier and just doing everything that I needed to do in order to do that. But yeah, I mean, even now, obviously he's in New Jersey, he comes to a couple games, but he'll watch the film, he'll watch the games, he'll send me clips as the game's going on, like just so many little things that he sees from the outside point of view. And then we'll go to the film and dial it back and talk about why I could have made this throw better or that. He's always just nitpicking, and I appreciate it for that because that's only going to make me better in the end.
Tommy, you had kind of an up and down career at Syracuse. You sat for a while behind Eric Dungy, who was a really good quarterback there. You got your chance. You were very productive. Then you got hurt. Then you got beat out. What did you learn from that roller coaster of being at Syracuse and now transferring here to Illinois?
Right, I think it's just a game of football, just fighting through adversity. Obviously got beat up a little bit when I was there, and had a whole little offensive change going on. But I mean, it's just really just never too high, never too low. There's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad. I just learned from all of it, whether it's good, bad, anything that happened with it, and I appreciate my time there. I wouldn't change it.
What made Illinois the right fit in the portal?
Really, Coach B. That was my big, a big deciding factor. Just his background and what he's done in the past and what he was bringing to the table and the style of football and the way that he coaches, and really just increasing my football IQ was really that was a huge thing for me.
This team has a chance to do some things that no Illinois team has done. I mean, first and foremost, making it to the Big Ten championship game. How much do you guys talk about that and the goals that are in front of this team?
Right. I mean, that's always been a team goal. I mean, that's something that we started breaking down on going into week 0, the week 0 game. But, the goal each week is just to go 1-0. That's it. You don't want to look ahead because, it's the Big Ten. Anybody can beat anybody. College football is pretty crazy. But, yeah, really just trying to go 1-0. So this week, obviously, we have a bye week. Learn from this last game, try to get better from it. Because obviously, there's still a lot to clean up, and then take care of our bodies and go on to the next one. And that's all we're thinking about is Nebraska.
In your mind, does this bye week come at a good time for you guys? I mean, you're playing so well. There's sometimes this kind of school of thought that if you are playing well, you just want to keep playing, or is the timing good for you guys?
Right. I think it's really good, especially for last week. We had a bunch of bumps and bruises here and there, so really just to get everybody back to 100. And I think that the way the schedule played out for us was awesome, especially playing at week 0. We got an extra bye week, so we had 3 games, 4 games, and then we have a 5-game stretch coming up. So I think that it comes at the perfect time. Obviously, we're rolling right now, but I think it's going to be beneficial for us.
Tommy, the program you left behind in Syracuse is having an unbelievable year, too. They are undefeated. I mean, I think it really shows, first of all, how valuable the portal can be and how it can kind of be a win-win for everyone, right? That you leave, they're still having a good year, you find a perfect place for you. But just kind of bigger picture, what has that meant to you? Are you still in touch with those guys, and what has their success meant?
Yeah, of course. I mean, those are my brothers. I played with them for many, many years. A lot of them are still on the team, so I always keep in contact with them. I try to watch every game. I was watching last week. Obviously, this week I have a bye week, so I'll be able to watch this week. They play Clemson, which is a huge game. They've upset them before, so I wouldn't be surprised if that happens again. But yeah, I mean, I wish the best for them. Nothing but best for them. They're my brothers. They always will be.
Well, Tommy, I know Illinois fans are really glad you ended up where you did because it has been a fun ride so far for the Fighting Illini. I really appreciate your time. Congratulations on all your success and look forward to seeing what's next here for you guys.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.